Mr. Snyder here with the first After Effects tutorial. What we're going to be doing is bringing this Photoshop graphic. This is a Photoshop file, .psd. It cannot be a JPEG or PNG or any other format of file. To work in After Effects, it must be a Photoshop file. So, what am I going to do first to prepare this to use in After Effects? Well, I'm going to go look over at my layer stack here. Look at my layer stack. These names of my layers isn't the most descriptive. So I'm going to go to Drake here. I'm just going to type in Drake. Double click on the name. There you go. Shape 1. I mean, that could be anything. Which one is it? Oh, it's the white one. Double click it. White shape. I should mention that you want to make sure your layers are properly named before handing in your Photoshop document, because otherwise you'll lose marks. Naming your layers properly is critical. Double click this one. What is it? It's the red shape. So double click it, red rectangle. Okay, there we go. So white, red, flag. Okay, but it's got a bunch of different things in it. So I'm going to just double click the name and I'm just going to call it flag. Keep it simple. Now what are these? These are text layers, right? There's Drake, views, 6, the. So there's our 4 different text layers. Okay. They can just stay what they are. What the name of the layer will show is what's written on each text layer, denoted by the T. Okay, and then we've got this up here. What the heck is rounded rectangle? Oh, that's what we call a separator. It's separating the first line of text from the second. Now this is a very simple graphic, okay, but we're just using this to get you used to the basic principles of Adobe After Effects. So let's just give that another name. Let's call it a separator. Okay, and all it's doing is separating the 2 different lines of text on the left here. Okay, so now I've renamed everything. What I need to do is go File and save it. So when I do bring it into After Effects, it's going to have these changes I've just made. Again, when you save your Photoshop, you want to go File, Save As. That's new to CS6. Even though I'm not in it. Well, I guess I am. Save as, and save on your computer. Here we go. The main thing I want to show you here is you're going to put your name up here first. So I'll put mine there, Snyder _ Drake lower third for AE. AE means After Effects. The key is it ends with .psd. And not anything else like JPEG or PNG or anything. It's a Photoshop document. And look down here. It must be Photoshop format. Do not go into any of these other things like Photoshop PDF. If you do that, you're basically getting rid of all of the layers and you can't animate it or edit it anymore. So make sure it says format, Photoshop, and that's it. You've got a name. Where am I going to save it? I'm going to save it on my hard drive right next to that other one. I'm going to go into your class folder. I'm going to go into the graphics unit. And I'm just going to save it in here. Okay? Again, it's a Photoshop. You get this compatibility dialog box. Just click OK. There we go. I'm ready to go. So now let's go to After Effects. You're going to click on After Effects. It might be at the bottom of your dock. You might have to go into Programs, depending if you're on a PC or a Mac. But I'm going to just click on CS6 is what I'm going to be using. CS6 and CC are very, very similar, if not identical. CS6 is not quite 3D. It's what they call 2.5D. Okay, as opposed to After Effects CC, it'll actually render out true 3D. We're going to be doing everything in 2D because, frankly, if you watch YouTube videos, television, 95% of the graphics, if not higher, you see are all 2-dimensional because they need to be simple, clear. 3D is kind of gimmicky when it gets to graphics. Okay, so 2 dimensions is what we're going to be working in. Now, what have we got here in After Effects? Well, if you look at this panel here, it says Project. This is like the Project panel in Premiere Pro. Okay, this is where you're going to have your sequence, but in this case, it's called a composition. And you see right now it says composition none. We don't have anything. Okay, so the composition's just like a sequence in Premiere Pro. Without one, you can't do any editing. or animation in this case. So that's where that composition or sequence would live. Then the other thing you're going to have in here in the project folder, if you think of it like the comparison to Premiere Pro, in Premiere Pro that's where you'd have your video bins, your image bins, your music bins, your graphic bins, all your assets that you're going to use in your project. In Premiere Pro, you're going to have the same thing here, and I'll show you that in a second. So this is where it's sort of our starting point. Okay, what else have we got? This is the timeline down here. It's broken into two different parts. The left side is going to be your layer stack. It's layers in After Effects. They don't call them tracks. So it's just like Photoshop. This is where all your layers from that graphic are going to appear. And once you've got each of the layers there, you can then individually edit them in a timeline on the right and make things animate. And I'll show you that in a minute too, or in the next tutorial probably. Okay, then what's this up here? This is your program window. This is where you're going to see your actual composition, which is going to be your graphic. Okay, and there's a bit of a trick to this panel, so pay close attention and I'll show you what that is. Before we get there, let's go right click in the project panel, import. Okay, and you're going to go import file. The other thing you could do, I never do, is go import file, or if you look, it's Command I. So whatever your preference is, Command or Control I. So I just like to right click. So I'm going to just right click, import file, and now I'm going to go look on my computer for my Photoshop.psd file. I'm going to navigate my hard drive, your course code. I got to go to my graphics unit. And then down here I'll find Snyder because that's the first word. Here it is. Snyder Drake lower third .psd. That's it. Okay. I double click it and then I get this pop-up. And what's this asking me? I can import this in one of three ways. Okay. I can import it as footage, composition, or composition retain layers. Bottom line is I always use composition and retain the layer sizes. Okay, just use that. This will pop up with the same settings that the previous person using After Effects used, so it may not be already at composition retain layer sizes, so just check that. And then the other thing, it says editable layer styles. A layer style would be like a glow or a drop shadow, something like that. I want to keep them editable because I'm an options guy, as I've said in class. I just like to keep my options open. You never know, you might change your mind on something. So it doesn't hurt to just keep the layer styles editable. And then click OK. Okay, so now what's happened here in the project panel? We've got two things that have appeared. This first one is the actual composition. That is what is going to give you your timeline. In a minute, I'll show you that. Okay, it's got this sort of film strip red and green icon here. That's the composition, like a sequence in Premiere Pro. Without it, you can't edit. You can't do anything. Below it is a folder that has all of the assets from all of the layers in your Photoshop document. So I can just look at them in this little preview window all separately. So that's what they are. Okay, so there's all your assets and there's your composition. So what do I need to do? Simply double click on the composition. Double click and it'll bring the layers up down here. Watch this. Double click. There's all my layers. This looks exactly like it looks in Photoshop. And that's what you want. Okay? If something's not looking right, ask for help. Now, what have we got here? Let's take a look. It looks like I'm actually in CC, not CS6, based on just a few little colors here and things. What have we got? Here's all our layers. Now remember, I named them. So there's the white rectangle, white shape, red rectangle, separator, flag. I've renamed those and the names carry with the layers. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is just hide all of these layers except the bottom. I always work from the bottom up in my layer stack, just like I design from the bottom up in Photoshop in my layers. There's my Drake picture. Just the background. It would be video if I was bringing it into a video program to edit, to add this animation. Okay, I just have that as a background image, Drake. This is not going to animate, okay? But I could by accident move that image just by clicking and dragging on it and not realize it right away. I might be just a bit off like that. I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that that is not going to move. So Command Z is your friend, back, undo, undo. It's a little different than Photoshop. It's exactly like Premiere. Command Z keeps going back. Shift Command Z keeps going forward. Okay? So I'm going to lock, there's a little lock icon. I'm going to lock the Drake or my background image, just so I don't mess it up by mistake. Now, let's look at things. I'm going to look at the white shape here. Okay? I have to turn it on. See, I can see the outline, the bounding box, but I don't see the fill because I've got that layer hidden. So turn it on. There we go. And it appears exactly like I want it. And there's my layer style on there. You see that? Okay, so there's my layer style down here. Oh, I've got these things added to it. Okay, see, they're turned on. Okay, so I've got the option to edit them if I want. I'm not going to, but I've given myself the option by leaving the layer styles editable when I opened up this composition. Now, I'm going to go look at the red. There's the red. Now, here's what can happen to you, and this took me about 3 or 4 years to figure out. Not really, but it can confuse you. If I, rather than turn this white layer on, if I double click it, oh, where'd everything go? Yeah, I see my white layer, but everything else is gone. And this will really confuse you. That's because if you look at these tabs up top, I'm looking at just the layer right now. It's like I've soloed that layer. I always want to be, for the most part, in Composition tab. Composition. That way I'll see everything else that I'm working on. So as I build this, I'll see the other layers on this composition. Okay, so if you ever find yourself like just seeing the layer, you can close that window, make sure you go back to composition, and then it'll be like, oh, good, okay, now I know, I get it now. So that's now ready to start animating. I've got all of my layers and I'm going to turn them all on. There's my final graphic. Everything's named correctly. I've locked my Drake and I'm now ready to animate. So in the next tutorial, I'll show you how to do your first animation in Adobe After Effects.